Hello, Mixtresses and Mixters. This is Mixtress Ray. You're watching Mixtress video. So I'm doing sort of a late night. It's kind of dark in here, actually. It doesn't look too dark on the screen, but in real life, it's a bit dark. So I'm going to I'm gonna do like a little bit of a year in review thing right now. I can't remember if I said any of this shit in my last video. If I did, you'll have to forgive me that I'm repeating myself. Things getting... Oh, man. Okay. So, I thought I would, kind of talk about some of my favorites from the year. And, shit like that. I'm also going to open a bottle of whiskey right now. Thank you. You know who you are. I had a friend send me money specifically to buy a bottle of bourbon. And I took her up on that today. So, let's have a little candleside chat, shall we? So this is going to be kind of a year in review, sort of personal shit, but also some favorites, So I'll start with my favorite perfume of the year. My favorite perfume that I acquired this year is called Goblin. This is a patchouli coconut blend from Black Phoenix Alchemy Lab, and it is delightful. But the one that's really my favorite, the one that's more in alignment with my ideals in life and how I want to do things going forward in my life. Just realized you can't see the top of this flame anymore, so we're gonna fix that. There we go. Okay. But my real favorite is the one that I made. This is an example of one that I made. I made a handful of my own perfumes at somewhere around the end of last year. Might have been the middle of last year. Doesn't matter. But they kind of needed a minute to age and they didn't really get good until this year. But this is one of them, called Sullen Girl. The one that I wear almost every day is called Bird Mad Girl, but it's in the other room. This is a clove vanilla. I have talked about it before on my channel, so that's just like, one of my achievements for from the last year or so is that I have made my own perfume. I know how to do it now, and I know how to make a perfume that I truly love, and I'm pretty proud of that. This flame is redonkulous. Oh my god, I haven't used that word in a while. I'm gonna have to trim this this motherfucker right here. I'm gonna have to trim you. she's a little less dangerous now. All right, cheers. I don't often get to have the good shit. So my favorite, I was looking back on like decks. You know, that's what everybody here wants to see, right? Is my favorite decks of the year. Turns out of all the tarot decks and oracle decks that I acquired this year, there really wasn't that many in the end. But out of all of them, I only kept 2 oracle decks and 3 tarot decks. And out of those 5 total divination decks that I kept, that I acquired in 2023, let's see, 3 of them were gifts. 3 out of 5. So yeah, and I'm not really going to discuss those actually, because my actual favorite deck from the year, the one that I used the most, is Marigold Tarot. Still a darling of mine. I love it a lot. So one of the things that I did this year is I put all of my decks into a piece of furniture it's essentially like a nightstand. It's just like a little dresser with 2 drawers, and I have 1 drawer for tarot, 1 drawer for oracle. And it effectively made my decks out of sight, which was good for me. And ever since I did that, I have culled many, many decks. I'm down to less than 20 tarot and less than 20 oracle, which I do think I said that in my last video, so I'm repeating myself, but hey, sometimes I do that. My favorite music from this year, according to my Spotify Wrapped stats, out of my top 5 artists of the year, 4 of them were in my top 5 last year as well. So, and they were Lana Del Rey, 9 Inch Nails, The Cure, and number 1 last year and this year, Chelsea Wolfe. I didn't have a lot of favorites this year from this year. Most of the pop culture I enjoyed was pop culture that I've enjoyed for a long time. So yeah, this video isn't really about the favorites, but let me make sure I mentioned everything. Oh, as far as favorite accomplishments of the year, there are a few. One of them was this mixtape that I made called In the Twanging Darkness. This is sort of a gothic Americana mixtape that I made, and I'm really proud of it. So there's that. I also made an art piece. I made the goddess Kali out of a Barbie, and I'm really proud of that. I ended up, just after I finished it, it went into an exhibit that was up for a month, the month of September. And it, afterwards I took it home, and it's now in my house. And effectively what happened was I didn't, my favorite goddess is Kali. I still don't really know what that means. Am I, what do you call it? supplicant of hers? Is she my matron? I don't know. I don't really know what that shit means yet in my life, but she is my favorite goddess, and I have reverence for her. And I didn't have a statue of hers. I do sort of use this goddess Tara statue as a stand-in for Kali, as I see them as two sides of the same coin. But I didn't have like an actual statue of Kali. I have a couple on an Etsy wish list that are really expensive that have been sitting on that wish list for many years. But this year I made my own out of a Barbie, which is really fitting, actually. So I'm actually, some of the things that I'm proud of this year, like as far as like, you know, accomplishments, I guess, like instead of presenting to you my favorites right now, I'm presenting to you the things that I'm proud of, which are, I just realized I should turn these bat lights on, right? Which are this mixtape, this and any other perfumes that I made myself this year, and that Kali statue that I made out of a Barbie. I made it out of entirely, with the exception of one thing, I bought a tube of paint to paint her skin blue with. But other than that, every other thing I had that I used for the Kali statue was something I either already had or that I borrowed, because I did borrow something from my grandpa to make the Kali statue. And yeah, so those are some things that I'm really proud of from this year. Learning how to be a little bit more resourceful with what I have. You know, making a Kali statue instead of buying one. Making perfume. So I want to do a little bit of year in review, which is why I'm clutching this little planner here. So these were my 2023 goals, and I get a gold star for all but one. Actually, I haven't added my gold star here, but in 2023, I planned to read 40 books, cross that out and put 30. And I'm reading my 30th book right now as I record this, a few days before the solstice. Or 2 days before the solstice, I guess. I did a no internet February, as I have done several other years. I think this was my 3rd year in a row doing it. I created a tarot, oracle, and perfume budget for myself at the beginning of 2023 that was very high. Basically, I was just trying to spend less than I did in 2022, and I far exceeded that. Like I said, I don't know how many tarot and oracle decks I bought this year. I was keeping track, but I don't have that anymore. The planner that I started the year with, I don't have anymore, which is where I was initially keeping track of that information. But I think I bought somewhere around 10 oracle decks and probably 5 tarot decks. 5 or 10? Less than 10 for sure, and probably more than 5, but I don't know for sure. But like I said, I only kept 3 tarot decks that I got all year, and 2 of them were gifts. And I only kept 2 oracle decks that I got all year, and 1 of them was a gift. So I really nipped that shit in the bud, my spending on tarot, oracle, and perfume. I did still spend, I don't know how much I spent on perfume this year, but it was definitely way under 800, which is ridiculous. Like, I should not be getting anywhere near that. But again, I have shopping addiction problems, so I was trying to do better than I did in 2022, so gold stars for me. I wanted to listen to more music in 2023, which is what I should have written here. This is the one gold star I don't get to give myself, because I wanted to exceed the number of minutes that I listened on Spotify in 2023. Because they tell you that at the end of the year, how many minutes you listened. but I did not succeed at that. However, I did succeed at listening to more music this year. I kind of diversified my places where I listen. You know, like I listened to more mixtapes this year. I listen to more CDs. I have a lot of CDs in the car right now and I listen to them. And I also listen to a lot of radio this year. And I downloaded the Soma FM app on my computer. And I've been listening to that a lot. It's like ambient music, 24/7, commercial-free radio. I fucking love it. It's from San Francisco. And they have a whole bunch of different stations. It's the best. Check it out. Soma FM. I listened to a lot of that this year. I started listening to more like, and subscribing to more like ambient music type stuff on YouTube. So I did succeed really at listening to more music. Make a mixtape, that was on my list. This is one, but I also made a couple more as well. Finish my Buffy podcast. I did that. Continue radio show, continue YouTube, continue Patreon. Did all of those things. My colleague Barbie art, I wrote in here. I didn't know I was going to be doing that at the beginning of the year, but I wrote it in so I could check it off, you know. This was just a book for my book club that we all passed around this year, and I read it. So my goals weren't super lofty in 2023, but I accomplished them. What else is in here? I kept track of how much money I made for my extra income sources in 2023. Let's see, how do I want to talk about that? In conclusion, I don't make very much in my extra income sources. I got paid twice this year on YouTube. So I made about $230 on YouTube this year. I gotta make playing cards pay out. I believe it's the only one I've ever gotten. So I've had 2 Oracle decks listed on Make Playing Cards for a few years now, I think. And I've only gotten 1 payout, so I'm not going to be making a career out of Oracle deck creating, that's for sure. Really the most consistent form of extra income, I'm not talking about my my library job here, but is really just my Patreon. So thank you to all of my matrons and patrons over on Patreon. I really appreciate you. And I want to apologize for not putting, for a while I had like one of those like little thank you screens that I was putting at the end of all my videos that was listing all of my patrons. But I've been having problems with my video editing software on my computer. So that's why like none of my videos have had any editing in them lately. I mean, I didn't edit that much before anyway, but still. Yeah, that's been an issue. Let's see. I was keeping track of all my daily card pulls, but I kind of stopped doing that somewhere around September. I could still go back and finish this little chart because I do have it written down in my journal, but anyway, so that's just kind of some basic, you know, things that happened this year, goals that I had in 2023, you know, etc. What else do we have here? Another thing that I started doing for myself this year is going on more walks. I have a solid routine now that includes minimum 1 walk per day, but usually it's 3. And, you know, it's not like super athletic shit, but it's really changed my life. Like, I'm in a much better mood most of the time, having an easier time with my PMDD, And yeah, it's just made my life better, easier, healthier. And I've started eating a little bit better this year. Overall, like a little bit better. As we are now in the holiday season, I've been eating a shit ton of sugar. So not doing the best at this exact moment as far as my eating habits, but you know. So those are just some things from the last year. And I wanted to share with you my favorite book that I read this year. Now, this is a book that I have owned since 2020, I believe. Trainwreck: The Women We Love to Hate, Mock, and Fear, and Why. And this is a feminist book about how we tend to reduce women if they step out of line, which this cover image is really kind of perfect for the theme of the book. When women step out of line, we destroy them. This is my second time reading this book this year. I think I said that already, sorry. And I think it's my favorite feminist book I've ever read. I want to show you kind of the table of contents because it gives you a good overview of the book, because I do highly recommend it. The Trainwreck: Her Crimes, Sex, Need, Madness, Death. The Trainwreck: Her Options, Shut Up or Speak Up. The Trainwreck: Her Role, Scapegoat or Revolutionary. So Trainwreck would be defined as, you know, your Billie Holiday, your Britney Spears, your Whitney Houston. You know, anyone that has sort of publicly self-destructed or just didn't follow the rules of a polite patriarchal society. So, like I said, I read this book before and I own it, but I decided to read it again this year because of the video. Yes, that one. The one that was all anyone on TarotTube could talk about for a minute. The video that I posted in April, wherein I was you know, okay, we'll get to it. Let me talk about why I love this book for a second, and then I'm going to talk about the video for a while. That is a big reflection for my year because it was a lot. And I've heard some other people kind of reflecting upon it at the end of the year. And I thought, well, shouldn't I reflect upon it since I'm the one that fucking put that video out there? Surely I'm the one it affected the most, right? So I'm going to finish my bourbon and then I'm going to read you a couple of quotes from this book that I highly recommend. Check it out from your local library. And okay, so one of the very final chapters is called The View from the Tracks. And it is kind of bringing it all back to us. So most of the book is talking about famous people that are considered train wrecks and how society has treated them throughout history. But the concluding chapter, and there's also like a postscript from, this is a later edition that's all about Hillary Clinton, but this was the original conclusion chapter. Talks about how we, now that social media is a big thing and the internet and all that stuff, we have started turning regular civilians into train wrecks more so, or alongside actual famous people, right? So I'm going to read you a couple of quotes from this chapter. We are now able to see our fellow citizens just as clearly as we ever saw the stars. Friends, family, Katy Perry, or some woman with too many babies, or a bad outfit, or an annoying Twitter feed in Detroit. It's all the same, all perfectly visible, on the 24-hour feed of human flaws and failures to which many of us now stay plugged in for most of the day. Civilian women make better, bigger, messier train wrecks. They just do. There's no track record, no prior investment. When they fuck up, their fuck-ups can become the whole story. You knew the Boston Marathon costume girl, or Octomom, or Tiger Mom, or crying YouTube kid with weird dad. But you didn't know anything about them before their moments of infamy. Their worst moments were all they'd ever been. So I am relating this to myself and the video, obviously, because I do think a lot of people didn't know who I was before that video. And I also think that a lot of people took things I said in that video completely out of context. And when I talk about it, I tend to, and I have talked about it many times, but when I talk about it publicly, I tend to fall into just very emotional reactions. How I felt while I was dealing with that video and the aftermath, and how people treated me in the comments. And, you know, something that I haven't really talked about here, at least, I have kind of gotten a little bit more personal with my patrons and told them a lot more of the story. But what I haven't spoken about publicly is, and I'm going to be pretty coy here, like I'm not actually going to reveal anything right now. But what I haven't talked about publicly is how I was treated behind the scenes by specifically a couple of people. One person that I used to call a friend, and one person that I didn't know before. And these were people that tried to get me to take the video down, and bullied me. One of those people was also publicly bullying me, but the other one, no, just privately. And again, I'm not here to turn anyone else into to not portray anyone else as a villain on my channel. I thought about telling the whole story, but I'm not going to, because as a wise woman asked me, what are you going to get out of that? And the answer was probably more ire directed towards me, right? So not going to go there. But the point is, when I talk about the video, I tend to get really sucked into friendships, how friendships were affected in my life. And it's important to note that personally, my own interaction with that situation resulted in me gaining some really good friends this year. And I am very grateful for that. Anyone that was willing to step into the ring and make a VR, speaking their own thoughts with their own agendas. Agenda's not the right word, but, you know, with their own thoughts and opinions on the situation, but also spending part of that time defending me. Anyone that was willing to do that, I am profoundly grateful, even if I never saw your video, because I got to a point where I could not watch the VRs anymore, because it's very fucking surreal to have a bunch of strangers talking about you. But some of those people are no longer strangers. Some of them are now friends. And it's a big deal. But I have talked about that before. But what I haven't talked about is, you know, how am I feeling now about the things that I expressed in that video. So here's the thing about me. I've said this before. I consider myself to be, and I describe myself as, a process queen, which for me means that one of the reasons why I'm here on YouTube talking about my life and talking about things that are important to me is because, can't lean on this table, is because I talk about things as I'm sorting them out. That's the kind of person that I am. I talk about things as I'm sorting them out. And I tend to stop talking about things when I've figured them out. So most of the time when you see me talking about something, I'm nowhere near finished on my thoughts about that subject. And it's always a good idea with my videos in particular, if you're watching them, to check the timestamp, because I may not, if it's a video from 6 months ago or a year ago or 6 years ago, then I likely have evolved since then. But I leave it all there. Unless I do something truly insensitive that requires an apology, and maybe I need to take something down. But the only time in the past I've ever taken a video down is, there was one that I was particularly ashamed of. Is ashamed the right word? But I very much did not stand behind anything I said in that video. So I took it down. And then there was another that was forcibly taken down because of a copyright strike. That was my Maury Povich video I posted when I was on Maury Povich back in 1999, I believe. And NBC gave me a copyright strike on that. So it did get taken down. But by and large, everything is there. Everything is there for you guys to see, because I choose to show you my process. So I do want to address a few things that I said in that video that I think differently about now, just in case that's the only other video you've ever seen of mine. So in the video, I have not rewatched it again lately because it's kind of difficult. Like, it was simultaneously the most traumatic thing that happened to me this year, but also the most liberating. Because to be honest, I was, sorry, I just lost my train of thought. Yeah, I just completely lost it. Okay, let's just start the sentence over and maybe I'll remember where I was. I had a long day at work today. It was simultaneously the most traumatic and the most liberating thing that happened to me this year. Okay, yes, I remember now. I have been worried for a long time, as many people are. I have been scared of being canceled. And this year, I feel like it happened, like, not literally, like, people would argue with my use of that word. Here's the thing though. I've been worried about that for a long time. I've been worried that I'm gonna say the wrong thing at some point, that I'm gonna attract ire, that people are going to try to take me down, that people are gonna misunderstand me in a big way. And that happened this year. And I've said this before, but I recommend it. I do. Not necessarily like everything I said in that video do I stand behind still. I definitely don't. But I recommend putting yourself out there and dealing with the fallout later. And when I say that, I obviously don't mean like being intentionally cruel or being an asshole or anything like that. It's just putting your thoughts and opinions out there, I think, is important. And I miss the type of YouTube space that when I first started watching YouTube, like many of you, there was a lot of just real crunchy human beings sitting around talking about their lives. And it was, with the exception of like the fucking Shane Dawsons of the world that, please go the fuck away forever. But with the exception of that element, I miss people just sitting around talking about shit, expressing actual opinions, being allowed to be an individual. I feel like we're missing a lot of individuality on YouTube right now at this moment in time. And I don't just mean TarotTube, but that is a part of it. I think we're being like pathologically neutral. And I think I've said that before, so I'll try not to harp on that too much. But so one of the things that I said in that video, I don't remember exactly like how I worded it or what. And it was kind of a throwaway comment for me, but people did fixate on it, was that, I was talking about knockoff decks and how I don't disagree with them. And I feel differently about that now. I don't think someone's art should be stolen. Let's be clear. I do not think someone's art should be stolen. I do think that there are people that, because they can get away with charging too much for a tarot deck, they are. And I don't like that. However, I definitely had a sense of entitlement, and I was experiencing a lot of bitterness when I recorded that video. I don't feel that anymore. That's gone. But that level of desperation that I felt in the moment of recording that video was part of the reason why. I mean, it was shopping addiction was the reason. And not having the funds to back up the things that I wanted, the things that I wanted to buy. I have some impulse control issues, and I feel that I deserve all of the things that I want in this life. And I still believe that I deserve all the things that I want in this life, but I'm trying to become more comfortable with just wanting things, because I don't have the funds to acquire all of the things that I want. And that's okay, because most of the time you get those things that you want and you don't want them anyway, because all of these things are not a good substitution for actual connections with other human beings in this life. And that is something that I was lacking at the beginning of this year. But I'm ending this year feeling the opposite. I feel so abundant now, when my financial situation that I laid out very thoroughly for you guys in that video has really not changed. In fact, it's somewhat worse now because everything costs more now. But I don't feel that bitterness anymore, So do I still think $95 is too much for a tarot deck? Yes. Yes, I do. Especially if it's kind of shit quality. However, I don't fucking care anymore. Other people are spending $95 on tarot decks. Great. Enjoy. I don't care. That lifestyle is not for me, and it never was. But I do want to say about knockoffs, because I kind of got off track there. I do still kind of understand why someone would buy a knockoff if a deck is out of print. However, I say that as a consumer that doesn't understand copyright law and things like that. So it was explained to me recently that something can be out of print but still under copyright. So, for example, Londa Marks, who made Crow's Magic Tarot, she's not making any money from the tarot decks that she created. US Games owns the copyright, even though both of her decks are out of print. So, but in my mind as a consumer, this is just my opinion, if she's not making the money anyway, then it doesn't really matter if you buy a knockoff versus if you buy a deck on eBay. But it does matter as far as copyright law is concerned. But as far as intellectually, in my mind, from the consumer viewpoint, it doesn't. However, it is a piece of shit that US Games gets to own Londa Marks' art. That sucks that that's the way that that is. And that's the advantage that an indie creator has, right? Because they own the copyright on their own shit if they're producing it themselves, right? And there have been people since the dawn of time that are making money off of artists because, you know, being business-minded isn't exactly what artists do, right? Which is one of the reasons why it can be very frustrating to buy decks from indie artists, because customer service might not be the best. Because again, artists are not necessarily business-minded, right? So I do want to say that I don't think it's a good thing to do to buy a knockoff tarot deck. That is someone's art. That is someone's art, and they should get paid for it. And if they choose to charge $95 for their tarot deck, they get to make that decision. And we get to not buy it. And we get to buy it or not, right? Great. When I was complaining about that so much in that particular video, it was from a viewpoint of a person that felt very deprived. And to be honest, I wasn't deprived, and I'm still not. But I felt that way because I was drowning in shopping addiction, consumerism, that kind of stuff. And yeah, so that is different now. That is something that I think of differently now. Yeah, I think I've pretty much said most of everything. The video was not meant to be, and I said this in the video itself, was never meant to be about the tarot deck that I was complaining about as an example. It was never meant to be about that. And when I, you know, the basic points that I was trying to make, I still stand behind those, you know? It's hard to be a person in this space the way that the status quo is right now in TarotTube. It's hard to be a person that can't afford to buy a lot of decks because the algorithm only wants the unboxings and the first impressions. And that's not actually interesting to me. You know, it was like I was trying to keep up with that for a minute to a certain extent when it was never for me. And so that's where some of the frustration was as well, is that I was trying to do something that made no sense. And I was frustrated also because I knew when I was saying some of the things that I was saying that they were not allowed to be said. Now, I had no idea how big of a reaction I would get from that video. I had no clue some of the really, truly violent and infantilizing things that people said to me, which ultimately I understand that it has nothing to do with me. Really, at the end of the day, none of that shit had anything to do with me. People were projecting onto me. And I know that, and I knew it then, but it was still, it was really emotional going through that. But I came out on the other side of it, and now I feel really free to say whatever the fuck I want, because I have no qualms now about, if somebody's being an asshole, I block and move on. I do not have the time or inclination in my life to suffer that bullshit again. I'm not going to do it. And this book in particular, reading this again, really emboldened me, because it's like, okay, well, my choices are to shut up or speak up. And I am not a shut up kind of person. And I would venture to guess that you aren't either. I think there's a lot of people that have channels on YouTube, and I don't just mean TarotTube. I think there's a lot of people that have channels on YouTube that are trying to they're trying to walk the line. They're trying so hard not to ruffle anyone's feathers, not to say anything out of turn. And it's crippling us. And it's not good. It's not good for your health to keep all that shit inside. And I'm not talking about being cruel. I'm talking about just talking about things, talking about your life. If you are living in fear that someone's going to tone police you, infantilize you, oust you from a community, then you're not really part of a community. If you can get ousted because you have some emotions in a video and don't say all of the right words, then this is not really a community. And, I'm not the first person to say that. It's not even the first time I've said that shit. And that's not to condemn the group of people that I happen to find myself associated with. It's not a condemnation. It's an observation about humanity. And it's not just the internet. This is what people do to each other. And it's a particularly sexist way of being. Yeah, we might be a collection of people on TarotTube that are largely women and a sprinkling of gay men, but we still have a shit ton of internalized misogyny that we are enacting, that we are playing out on each other. And that needs to be examined. And I'm not going to shut up. I'm going to continue hanging out in my little tarot closet and talking to you guys about my thoughts every once in a while. And, y'all weren't able to shut me up. And you know what? I'm not scared of that happening to me anymore, I'm not scared anymore. And I know who I am now more, just in reflections of the year territory in general. I know who I am now more so than I did at the beginning of 2023. At the beginning of 2023, I felt like I was part of a community for the first time in a really long time. I thought that I was in a space where people accepted me for who I am. And I was wrong, yes, but I also, not only was I wrong, but because I felt like I was part of a community, there was some piece of my individuality that I was the word? Sublimating, that had been absorbed into the into the community. I lost a piece of myself. I lost some of my autonomy. And I got it back in a really weird and violent way. However, it's back. I'm back to myself again. You know, like Sylvain was saying in his most recent video, he feels like he's coming out of a spell. The way that I've described it most often is I'm waking up, I've woken up from a coma, you know, I'm myself again. And at the end of this year, I have, and I just keep saying this and it just feels weird, like I'm sitting around bragging about like having friends, but I do have actual friends. It's not a faceless community of people that just sort of generically accept me as long as I don't step out of line. It's actual individuals that I can go to when I'm having a hard day. And that is fucking priceless. So it's just like a really weird sort of gaslighty relationship, you know, me and TarotTube. Because on the one hand, a lot of y'all treated me real shitty in the comment section of that video. But on the other hand, I've made some genuine friends. And through being here and talking about my shit with you guys, just real shadow work every time I press record, has pushed me forward in a way that I don't think would have happened if I didn't have this channel. So if any of y'all are looking at me as a cautionary tale, don't, because I'm doing great. And I, you know, just personally as a viewer of YouTube myself, I would love to see more people talking about their process in life. You know, I want to see people's, like, you know, their worldview, their philosophies, like how they're processing things, how they're navigating the world. And it seems like it's getting harder and harder to find that. It's just like, I like long videos of people just rambling about things that they're thinking about. That's just my personal preference. And that is hard to find, for me anyway. Let me know in the comments if you guys have any recommendations for people, no matter what they're into. You know, it doesn't have to be tarot or witchy things or anything that I like. Just like, you know, what channels do you guys recommend of people that just are really just authentically talking about their experience in life? Because I love that shit. And I want to see more of that. And that's what I'm here to do. I'm not here to sell decks. In fact, I just bought a deck that in the past I was really fighting to get this particular deck because I've known it's been in production for a long time. In the past, I really wanted to get like a free deck to review. I wanted to review it for you guys and get it for free. But in the end, I decided, no, actually, I'm going to buy it. So that if I don't want to share it, I won't share it. And if I do, I will, and it will be on my own motherfucking terms. Because I am not going to be a tarot deck shill for you guys. I'm sure a few of you wish that I would, but most of you don't. Most of you are here because you're interested in me for some reason. Even if you're hate watching me, welcome. All are welcome here. Okay, I'm gonna stop now. But my year in review, 2023, it's been really good. It's been really good, actually. I feel like I've done, I mean, forgive the term, I think I'm using it right. I think I've done a lot of shadow work this year. And I'm going into 2024. I've got some goals. I'm going to do an internet no-buy. And I'm really excited about it. And I'm definitely going to talk to you guys more about it later. But yeah, I'm feeling optimistic. I'm feeling grateful. And thank you for being here.